So on to our next piece. This is the DAKE horizontal bandsaw, right? It plugs in over here, so you want to make sure that this breaker is on. This thing's sitting on a stand with cat litter in it because it's a cold saw. It has fluid coming out of it, and it gets all over the place pretty easy. But you guys are going to use this a lot, especially for cutting the pipe. We also have a big Marvel vertical bandsaw over there, but we're going to save that one for individual teaching with the instructors because that's a very sophisticated and expensive piece of equipment. But this one's pretty easy to use. There's just a couple things you got to keep in mind. So we have a start button, on and off power start button here. We have a control button here, a lever, and when I turn this drops this thing down, and if I turn it just a little bit, I can control the speed at which it comes down. I can do it really fast, or I can make it really slow. If I turn it off, it stops. And then I can just grab this and lift it back up to its original starting position. So being as it is a cold saw, the first thing you have to do is make sure that it has fluid down in the tank. If it doesn't, find some fluid, get your instructor. We got to get some fluid in it. So where the fluid comes out is right here. When I turn this on, you can see that the fluid is coming out of this nozzle. And I don't need a whole bunch of fluid coming out of it. I just need enough fluid to wet the blade. And I'm going to move this thing over so that fluid is falling right on the blade and keeping the blade wet. Again, you don't need a bunch, you just want to keep the blade wet because the more fluid you run, the messier the job is. So I'm just going to position that right on that blade, nice and careful, and you can see that fluid coming in on that blade, and it's keeping the blade wet. Now, there's also some adjustments on this thing to slide this in and out, and slide this one in and out. Your instructor can go over that more with you. What I'm doing today is just showing you how to run this thing to make some cuts, and as you work on it, you'll figure it out a little bit more. There's some adjustments on this thing to cut angles on it. You can loosen the bolts and cut your angles, your 45-degree angles or whatever, but we're just not going to get to that quite yet today. The main components I want to show you are the power, the feed, up and down, and the clamp. So it's very simple. We're going to cut a piece of pipe. We have this main wheel over here, and this wheel loosens up this clamp. So I bring my pipe out wherever I want to cut it and measure it. I tighten the clamp up. Now don't over tighten this. Again, if it's tight, it's tight. Don't start over tightening it because that's when we strip things out. So I've got this piece of pipe in here. I've got my clamp on. The only other thing I really need to know is the power button and my feed. Everybody always wants to cut stuff faster than the machine wants to. Let the machine work. So you can bring this down pretty fast, but once it gets to the metal, just take your time, slow the thing down, and let the saw just ease its way through there. It makes the blades last a lot longer. It's more of a straight cut, and it might take a minute, but the end results will be much better. Now when I run these things, I am always very close to this red button. If anything happens, the blade can break, it can grab the pipe and spin it. There's lots of things that can happen. Always stay right by this power off switch. If something crazy goes on, hit the power off. So we've got our pipe clamped, not too tight. We've got our pipe clamped. I'm going to turn it on, make sure that my fluid is hitting that blade and keeping it wet, and then I'm just going to slowly bring it down and we'll watch this thing run through its cycle. Okay? So, power on. You can see it's stationary, it's not moving yet. I got to make sure my fluid is on my blade. It's keeping the blade nice and wet. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to bring it down. And that's too fast. So I'm going to slow it down when I get here. I'm going to slow it down a little bit more to about right there. And I think that's pretty good. Now I'm just kind of sitting here with my hand on the kill switch in case it need be. And you can watch how this thing cuts that pipe right off. When it gets to the end, I'm going to push the stop button. It all stops. So, you can see the cut quality is very nice. It's a very nice saw. You want to make sure you knock all these burrs off so they don't cut you. You want to make sure you wipe all the cutting fluid off before you try and weld it. But there's your piece. Now we come over and simply turn this off. We grab the lever, bring it back up, loosen up our clamp, slide the pipe back through, run through the process again. Again, let the saw do the work. Make sure the fluid is on the blade. Don't cut too fast. Keep your hand by the off switch. You shouldn't have any problems. It's a grade O saw. You're all going to end up using it at some point.